Okay, we'll get started. Hello and welcome to Congresswoman Veronica Escobar's Legal Name and Gender Marker Change Virtual Workshop. Si gusta participar en español, oprima Interpretación en la parte baja de su pantalla y seleccione Spanish o Español. My name is Jazmine Venegas. I am a district representative for Congresswoman Escobar, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. After an introduction by the Congresswoman and presentations from our panelists today, we will take questions from the audience. If you would like to ask a question of one of our panelists, please type your question in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. First, we will start with a welcome from Congresswoman Escobar. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jazmine. Really appreciate all the work that you've put into making sure that this is a successful event. And welcome to everyone who's participating. Welcome to the Legal Name and Gender Marker Change Virtual Workshop. My name is Veronica Escobar. I am so proud to be your representative in Congress, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I would like to thank today's panelists from Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, TransFORWARD, the American Civil Liberties Union of Texas, the Bureau of Consular Affairs, the Social Security Administration, and the University of Texas at El Paso for making this event possible. As an ally of the LGBTQ community and as your representative in Washington, I'm committed to working in Congress to ensure that we all have the right to exist fully, equally, and authentically. In my first term, I was proud to earn a 100% rating on HRC's Congressional Scorecard. I co-sponsored bills like the Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act to prohibit so-called conversion therapy and the Do No Harm Act to prevent the denial of services to LGBTQ people on spurious religious freedom grounds. I also wrote to Governor Abbott opposing state legislation that threatened to allow social workers and other care providers to discriminate against LGBT individuals in our state. I've led numerous efforts to improve diversity and inclusion in our military and joined efforts to block President Trump's ban on trans military service. And I've also joined in multiple amicus briefs to the Supreme Court and letters to President Trump, urging the fullest possible protections for LGBT individuals under existing civil rights law, including the right to access healthcare and to serve as adoptive and foster parents. Today, we focus on two important elements of identity, our names and gender. I'm excited to host this workshop and provide you with the resources and information necessary to legally change your name and gender markers in the state of Texas and update vital documents like driver's licenses, birth certificates, and federal documents like Social Security cards, passports, and military and veteran records. I'd like to introduce our panelists and again express my sincere gratitude to all of them for spending their time helping our community in this way and participating in our discussion. First, Gabriel Sanchez, Community Outreach Coordinator from Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. Dr. Oralia Loza, Associate Professor of Public Health Sciences from the University of Texas at El Paso. Audrey Perez, Policy and Advocacy Specialist from the ACLU of Texas. Andres Rodriguez, Community Relations Officer for Passport Services at the Bureau of Consular Affairs, and Ray Vigil, Public Affairs Specialist from the Social Security Administration. Thank you again all for being here, and I look forward to the conversation. Back to you, Jazmine.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thanks so much for joining us today. And if you have to jump off, have a great day, and we will start the discussion. A reminder for folks that we are providing a live Spanish translation. Si gusta participar en español, oprima interpretación en la parte baja de su pantalla y seleccione Spanish. Ahead of the event, we sent out an email with different handouts that we'll be referring to during the presentation, particularly the local resources page for El Paso, one in English and one in Spanish. So please take a moment to download that and follow along and during the presentation. Our first panelist is Gabriel Sanchez, Community Outreach Coordinator for Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, here to talk to us about the legal process. So I will hand it over to Gabriel at this moment.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Sanchez. My pronouns are they and them. I work with Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid throughout our service area in coordinating Trala's outreach efforts. And part of my job has been expanding our presence and the services that we offer to the LGBT community and connecting more people, especially in the trans and gender diverse community, to the services that we provide. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about Trala, Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, the organization that I work for, and some of the services we offer, but primarily I'm going to focus on changing your name and correcting your gender marker in the state of Texas, which is a service that we offer for low-income trans folks throughout our service area, which includes El Paso and the surrounding areas. And I'm also going to talk about an upcoming opportunity for changing your name and correcting your gender marker that we have coming up in January. So I'll go ahead and share the presentation I had worked up to just kind of talk about this, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. So, can everybody see that? Jasmine, if you could just give like a thumbs up.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So in the state of Texas, it is possible to change your name and correct your gender marker so that it more accurately reflects the way that you identify and that it more accurately corresponds to your gender identity. Unfortunately, Texas does not have a non-binary gender marker option as of yet, but hopefully that's something that's coming in the future further down the line. But for now, if you are trans, you can change your gender marker to reflect your gender identity. And it's a process that we help guide people through. So just a basic introduction to who Trala is. We are Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. We provide free legal assistance and advice in civil matters to low-income residents throughout our service area in Texas. And our service area is pretty big. As you can see, the part in blue is the part we cover, so it's about a third of the state. We serve the entire border region, going from the Rio Grande Valley in Southeast Texas all the way up to El Paso, as well as a lot of the areas of Southeast Texas. And so if you live in El Paso or in any of the areas in the blue, you are part of our service area. For the name and gender marker change cases, we can actually take additional cases outside of our service area under a lot of circumstances because we file them in Austin, and I'll explain that in a bit. We are not currently closed, but our staff are working remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. You can apply for legal services by calling our hotline from Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. So just adjust that to Mountain Time. Sorry, I didn't fix that beforehand. I should have thought about it. Y'all are one of the only parts of our service area that's in Mountain Time, and but you can call from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Mountain Time, excluding some holidays. And if you're facing eviction and would like legal information about fighting eviction or representation or other assistance with navigating your eviction issues, you can apply online at any time. And this is something that we instituted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We know a lot of people are facing challenges when it comes to housing and challenges when it comes to evictions. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to get the advice or assistance or representation that they need if they're being faced with an eviction. So you can actually go to our website, www.trla.org, and apply for assistance directly. We also help with appealing public benefits. We help with divorces, family law, custody issues, child support. We also help with employment issues and housing, as well as a wide variety of other civil legal issues. You can actually go to our website and see a full list of our different practice areas. For trans folks, we know that trans people sometimes encounter employment discrimination or unfair treatment in the workplace. Sometimes trans folks encounter unaffirming or unaccepting school districts, and trans youth often have to navigate schools that refuse to use the correct name and pronouns or make other reasonable accommodations to reflect the child's gender identity. And we also know that trans folks sometimes struggle with housing discrimination. So we can, if you are facing any of that, and you're interested in applying for Trala's legal services, you can call our hotline number, and I'll put it again at the end, but it's down there in the blue. It's 888-988-9996. I actually answer the hotline I'm one of the people who answers on Tuesdays and Fridays. So if you call on those days, you might get me. To qualify for our services, you Usually you must be a resident of our service area or a farm worker. Typically you have to meet income and asset limitations set by the federal government. People often ask, like, if I make this much, do I qualify or not? Or if I make this much, am I eligible? And it doesn't really work like that. It's not a one size fits all model. We take a lot of different things into account when determining financial eligibility for our services. For example, family size, unreimbursed medical expenses, debts. If you were making a lot of money pre-COVID and then you lost your job because of the pandemic, we can take that into account. We can help annualize your income. If you just got hired, but you were unemployed for months and months before that. So we will work with you to see, how whether or not you qualify. So the best thing you can do is just call and ask, and don't select yourself out, right? Sometimes we have people say, well, I didn't call because I didn't think I was going to qualify, but let us figure that out. That's our job. But to qualify for our services, a person does typically have to be low income, either themselves or their household. And in most cases, a person needs to be a United States citizen, an LPR, or qualify under other immigration categories. But this depends on the case, and minors can be clients as well. So in certain cases, we can open up a case under a minor and help the rest of the family in that way. And then we also provide assistance to people who are in a wide variety of different immigration situations. So the best thing you can do is just call and see if you would qualify. But typically a person does have to be a United States citizen or an LPR to qualify for our services. And you have to have a case that meets our priority and acceptance guidelines. So unfortunately, we can't help everybody. We do get thousands of calls a month, and we're just not able to take every case of every person that applies with us. We do our best, but unfortunately, we're just not able to take every case. And so everybody who applies will at least get a letter of free legal advice and some steps that they can take to try to resolve the problem on their own. So if you're facing any issues related to eviction, if you just want more information about your rights in like a school setting, or when it comes to housing, when it comes to employment, or if you're having a family law issue, or you applied for benefits and you were denied, we often provide assistance in those kinds of cases. And this is a number that you can call if you want to apply for TRALA services. Our number is 1-888-988-9996. And I'll show that one more time at the end of the presentation. So now we're going to talk about what we're here to talk about, which is changing your name and correcting your gender marker in the state of Texas. Again, some people are surprised to find out that in Texas, you can change your name and not only change your name, but also correct your gender marker to correspond to your gender identity. We have been doing these cases for about 3 years. For the most part, we file them in Travis County. So the person who we are helping with the name and gender marker change doesn't actually ever have to appear in court at all. And we have worked to make the process as streamlined and user-friendly and simple as it can be for the person who we are assisting. So you do need some important documents in order to change your name and correct your gender marker with us. If you are just changing your name, and I'll talk more about that in a bit, we need a fingerprint clearance card. Oralia is going to talk a little bit more about some local resources available for getting your fingerprint clearance card, but we do need a fingerprint clearance card, and it is looks like this when it's blank, and then looks like the top one when it's filled out. And we also need a copy of your birth certificate. Now, if you want to change your name and your gender marker, in addition to the fingerprints and the birth certificate, we also need a doctor's letter. That can look like a few different things, and there are a few different options available for trans folks. So the best option, or the preferred option, is a letter from a physician who is providing gender affirming care. That typically looks like an endocrinologist or someone who is prescribing HRT, because sometimes family doctors or general practitioners can also prescribe HRT in certain circumstances. So the best option is a doctor who is providing direct gender affirming care to a person at the present time. So again, usually that looks like the person who's providing HRT if the person is medically transitioning. If the person is not medically transitioning, or I can imagine that in El Paso, just like in the Rio Grande Valley, where I live, there are a lot of trans folks who choose to cross the border into Mexico and do sort of like a DIY transition because hormones are easier to access in Mexico and also more financially accessible for a lot of people than they are in the United States. So we do know that people do that. Of course, that's going to make it difficult to get a letter from a doctor because you're not getting your HRT, through a prescription from a doctor. The next best option is a letter from a physician who has provided gender affirming care in the past. That could mean someone who did top surgery or facial feminization surgery, or if you were on HRT for a long time and you decided to stop for whatever reason, the doctor who previously provided your HRT. Any doctor who's provided any kind of gender affirming care, medical care in the past can provide that letter. So that's another option. A third option for a doctor's letter is a letter from a physician who is a general practitioner and who has familiarity with you. So if you are not medically transitioning, or you're not currently medically transitioning, but you did in the past, or you're, you have had HRT, but it was more, it wasn't through a doctor. Oftentimes you can discuss this with your general practitioner. And if your general practitioner agrees, they can write a letter saying, I have familiarity with this patient is transgender. It's a pretty simple and straightforward letter. The doctor's letter used to be a lot longer and more complex, and there was like multiple paragraphs, and now it's like a really simple thing. Of course, the doctor has to agree to it, right? You can't make your doctor provide it. But those are the three different options. So again, it can be a doctor who's providing gender affirming care to you now, someone who's provided gender affirming care in the past, or a letter from a physician who is a general practitioner and has some familiarity with you. So if that's like your family doctor or the doctor that you go see once a year for an annual checkup and they are trans affirming and you have a good relationship with them, sometimes you can get them to provide the letter. We've had clients do all three. Of course, the most common one is someone who's providing gender affirming care right now, but we've also done it with the other two options. Now, we do prefer a doctor's letter. It makes it, if you ever want to change your passport in the future, you will need to get a doctor's letter. And so for all other documents, we can try to do it without a doctor's letter, but we do prefer that if it's possible at all, someone get a letter from a physician. Now, we know that there are trans folks who, for whatever reason, don't want to physically transition. Maybe they don't see that as a part of their transition, or they don't want to medically transition. I apologize. They don't see it as a part of their transition. It's not something they want to do, or maybe they haven't made up their mind yet about whether or not it's something that they want to do, but they do want to change their name and correct their gender marker. We can try to do it with a letter from a counselor or a mental health professional. We have done those before in the past, but we usually only do it if we don't have the option to do it with a mental health, a medical doctor. So that can be a counselor or a therapist who has some familiarity with you and who might be able to provide the letter. And I think Oralia is also going to cover some resources in the El Paso area for counselors who might be able to see trans folks to provide this letter. So what if you're non-binary? Awesome, I'm non-binary too. I mentioned this at the beginning that unfortunately Texas does not currently have a non-binary gender marker option. We're seeing more and more states in the United States and more countries outside of the United States adopt an official non-binary gender marker. So sometimes that looks like an X or an O for other. And hopefully that's something that might happen in the state of Texas someday to help more non-binary people feel affirmed in their gender identity. As of now, you cannot change your gender marker to a non-binary option in the state of Texas. The only options available are the binary genders of male and female. But we've had a lot of non-binary clients, and sometimes non-binary people want to choose their name, to change their name legally to their chosen name, and don't necessarily want to change their gender marker because, again, we don't have that option for a non-binary gender marker. We also have a lot of non-binary people who say, I don't identify as male, but my ID says male, but the way that I present and the way that I identify is closer to female. And so just to navigate the outside world, or just because I feel more closely aligned with female than male, I want to change my gender marker to reflect that. So if you want to change your gender marker to the opposite gender marker to the one that you were born or assigned at birth, you can go ahead and do that as well if you're non-binary. So we have had a lot of non-binary clients who, let's say, were assigned male at birth and identify as like non-binary trans feminine, and they change their gender marker to female because it more accurately reflects how they identify, or because it just makes it easier to navigate the world with their presentation. What if you have a criminal history? We know that life happens and that trans people, and especially trans people of color, are often unfairly targeted by the legal system, right? So if you have a criminal history, it really just depends. We encourage you to apply, in order to, so that we can talk to you about it. We will usually need a copy of your criminal history in order to be able to proceed with the name and gender marker change. If you are currently on probation, in most cases, it's very difficult to change your name or your gender marker. And if you were just released from prison, if you were formerly incarcerated and you were just released, you usually have to wait until 2 years after your probation ends to be able to change your name and correct your gender marker. There are a group of activists, of trans activists, trying to actively change this in the state of Texas right now, arguing that it constitutes cruel and unusual punishment to force trans people to stay with a gender marker and a name that doesn't reflect who they are just because of their criminal history. I don't know where that is right now, but I do know that that's something that people are trying to do. But as of now, if you are currently on probation, or if you were, recently incarcerated, it might be very difficult to change your name and gender marker. We encourage you to reach out to us and we can, kind of talk you through the process more. And if you have a criminal history, again, we will most likely need a copy of that criminal history. Even if it was a really long time ago and it was just like a misdemeanor, it's a good idea for us to include it in the petition to avoid any kind of complications further down the line. If there are certain criminal, there are certain criminal histories that will not allow a person to ever change their name and gender marker, we can talk to you more about that. But for example, if someone has to register as a sex offender, it can be very difficult to do this. But again, we can talk more about that when we talk to you one-on-one. What if I'm a minor? Trans children exist. Trans children are valid, and they are, it's becoming more and more common as we as a society become more aware of the diversity of gender and gender experiences for more children to come out at younger ages. In the state of Texas, it is possible for a minor to change their gender marker and to change their name. However, they have to do so with parental support. That can be with the consent of their parents. That can be really challenging if you are a trans or non-binary minor and you live with parents who are not affirming or accepting of your gender identity. Unfortunately, there's not really a way around that right now. But we've also had a lot of trans children apply for services with us through their families. And if their parents both give consent, we can change their name and correct their gender marker. The requirements for either a doctor's letter or a counselor's letter are the same. Again, a doctor's letter is preferred. And that can be someone who's prescribing puberty blockers, or it can be just a pediatrician who has some familiarity with the child. Again, we do need parental consent, and we usually need parental consent from both parents. So that can be a little tricky if both parents are not in contact with the child, but we can, again, talk to you about that when you apply. So this is a question I get really, frequently, and it's, what can I change my name to? A lot of times people say, well, I want to change my name to Wind or Air. Those are just examples, but you can change your name to absolutely anything. There are no limits. You can really change your name. No one's going to tell you that name is impractical or it's not a real name. But unfortunately, there are a lot of trans people who say, well, I don't think they'll let me change it to my chosen name. And it's like, no, we totally can. There's a joke in the non-binary community that we all have names like Rock and Curse and Air. People can change their name to whatever they want to change it to. And if you are non-binary and you want to change your name, but not necessarily your gender marker, because again, there's no non-binary gender option, we can also help you with that. So what if you're undocumented? So typically, to qualify for our services, a person does have to be a resident or a citizen of the United States. We can help people under other immigration circumstances, and that is a little more complicated. And so we encourage you to, call us if you have questions about that. In general, if a person has DACA, they don't typically qualify for our services, but we will be able to include them in a name and gender marker change clinic that we have coming up, where we can take anybody regardless of their immigration status, because we're collaborating with the UT Austin School of Law. If you are undocumented and you don't have any kind of status in the United States, whether you might not have DACA or any kind of pending immigration status, there isn't really much to change, right? Because getting a name and gender marker change here in the United States would not transfer to your country of origin. If you wanted to change your name and gender marker on your documents in your country of origin, that's something you would have to do through that legal system. We wouldn't be able to do that. So unless you have some kind of status pending or some kind of status in the United States, there isn't really much to change. And so if a person has DACA, it totally makes sense for them to change their name and gender marker if that's something that they want to do, because they can update it on all of the paperwork that they've gotten through DACA. If somebody has like a T visa or a U visa pending and they want to change their name and gender marker because they want it to be correct on their documents when they get them, that's another thing that we can sometimes assist with. You can change your name without changing your gender marker. We offer that assistance for trans and non-binary people. And you can also change your gender marker without changing your name. We have a lot of trans folks that tell us, I don't mind my birth name. It's gender neutral, or I like it, I'm used to it. I don't really need to change my name, but I do want to change my paperwork to reflect that I'm female because it still says male because that's what I was assigned at birth. And that's totally valid. You can do that. If you're only changing your name, we don't need any kind of documentation from a doctor or a counselor. We would just need the fingerprints card. So we do have a name and gender marker change clinic coming up. Sorry, that was supposed to have a picture of the flyer, but I can send that out after this or include it in the chat. But we do have a name and gender marker change clinic coming up. It's a Friday, January 22nd. It'll be done with the UT Austin School of Law, and all appointments will be virtual. And all appointments will be virtual, and we will be able to help people at that clinic regardless of their immigration status and regardless of their income. And this clinic is prioritizing El Paso and the Rio Grande Valley. So we definitely want a lot of El Paso people to apply or to participate in the clinic. You can contact me at Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid to do an application by phone and open up a case. My number is there, and I'll provide it again. But it's 956-393-6204. You do need to pre-register for the clinic. You need a pre-registration to get the Zoom link. And so you do need a call to apply. You need to get your fingerprints and your letter from a doctor or mental health counselor. If you don't have it ready to go on that day, you can still participate in the clinic, and we'll help you do the petition, and then you can file it once you have all your documentation. After that, we'll schedule your appointment for January 22nd. You'll get a Zoom link, and it's really very simple. You'll never have to go to court. Depending on your situation, we can talk more about it on that day. What if you have an additional legal problem, like an eviction or an employment issue? If you have any other legal problems, please call our hotline, 888-988-9996. Specifically for name and gender marker changes, you can call me at 956-393-6204. You can also email me at gsanchez@trla.org, but I can't answer any questions by email. It's a lot easier to explain it by phone. So if you email me, I just need your name and your phone number, and I will call you back as soon as I can. I can't answer any questions in the email itself. Just send me your name, your gender marker, your name, your phone number, and let me know that you're interested in the clinic and where you're from. So I know that it's like El Paso or the Rio Grande Valley, and then I'll call you as soon as I can. You can also call me and leave me a voicemail, and again, I'll call you back as soon as I'm able to. And that's it. I know we'll have time for questions later, so I'll go ahead and stop the share. But thank you all so much for having me here. I am not from El Paso, but I love El Paso the few times I've gone, and I'm really, really excited to include more El Paso folks in this clinic. Unfortunately, we haven't had too many people access this service from the El Paso area, so I'm hoping that this will change that.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Yes, we are hoping that that's the case too. That's why, if you are interested in this clinic, even if you don't have your documents ready by the 22nd, just please reach out to the phone number that Gabriel provided, because that'll help you get the information that you need so that you can participate in something like that in the future. So thanks a lot so much. Let me just remind people that we are providing a live Spanish translation. Si gusta participar en español, oprima en interpretación en la parte baja de su pantalla y seleccione Spanish. So next we will hear from Dr. Oralia Loza and Adri Perez, and they will go over the local places where you can get the documents that Gabriel described just now.
Hi, everyone. And Welcome to this information session. Gabriel has just explained all the required documents for a name change and gender marker correction. And I just want to share with you a resource that we've created that is specific to El Paso and includes the locations where these documents can be obtained. This document is available in Spanish and English, and it should have been included in your email reminder, but if you need help accessing these files, let us know and we'll make sure you get these. So it's a PDF file and it includes a list in the table of contents of all the documents that are required, including whether or not it's optional. And for example, for the background check, it's required only those with a criminal background. So you can click on any one of these and it'll take you to that section. And I'm pointing this one out simply because, for example, for this list includes federal, county, and city locations. But for the FBI or the identity history summary check at the federal level, it does require a second fingerprint card. And so that might be something you want to prepare for if you're already getting one to submit along with your name change and gender marker filing. And so I just wanted to point that out. It does require an application and a fee of $18. However, I just wanted to point out that it does require a separate fingerprint card. And so again, you can go back to the table of contents and click on each of the required documents or optional documents. And I'm going to click on the letter from the provider and pass things on to Adri Perez.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. I went through this process in 2014, and to have had this resource from the Congresswoman and from so many community organizations would have been immensely helpful. I actually pulled out my fingerprint card here because I had it handy. I myself am a trans person and I am non-binary. So I actually only went through the process of changing my name in 2014. And that is largely because I was very nervous about being able to acquire a letter from a provider, and I didn't know where that could be done. Thankfully, 6 years later, that is a separate situation. That is a different situation now, and we have Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas, a clinic that is located centrally off of the freeway that provides gender-affirming care and can also provide letters to their clients and patients. As Gabriel mentioned, this would be a letter from a doctor that is providing gender-affirming medical care, and so here on the document, it is listed as the top document, the top letter to be able to help you with a gender marker change. But in the absence of that letter, we also have the Borderland Rainbow Center that provides mental health services on a sliding scale, and they will typically see somebody for a few sessions, 4 to 6, depending on each individual patient, before providing a letter, but they can also provide that letter for you now. Yeah, I believe some of them have also joined us for this call, so they would be expecting you if that is a service that you need.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is Jazmine again. I dropped the link to where you can download these documents in the chat. So you can visit the event page for this workshop, and the documents are attached there for you to download. And of course, if you have any questions for Oralia or for Adri on which is the best place to go, or what was your experience going to this place to get your background check, your fingerprints, or a letter from a provider, you can always reach out to myself or reach out to me, and I'll put my email in the chat as well. Welcome the panelists and presenters to drop their information in there as well, so that we can be of further assistance. So thank you both, Oralia and Adri, for that. The next presenter is Andres Rodriguez, Community Relations Officer for Passport Services at the Bureau of Consular Affairs, who will go over the process for updating name and gender marker on your passport.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andres. I identify as he, him. I work for the U.S. Department of State in the Bureau of Consular Affairs. It's the bureau that issues US passports to all US citizens, in addition to visas and taking care of US citizens when they're outside of the country. So with passports, I'm going to explain how to proceed with a gender change or a name change. And to start off with, the most basic documents that we require for passports are related to your citizenship and identification. Those are the two main things that we try to establish in order to issue a US citizen a passport. So every application for a passport, whether it's you're applying for the first time or renewing a passport, will require citizenship evidence, which can be a US passport. It could be an original birth certificate. If you're born outside of the country and naturalized, it would be a naturalization certificate from USCIS. And if you were a US citizen born abroad, then you would have been issued a consular report of birth abroad through one of our US consulates around the world. Aside from citizenship, we look at identification. We want to establish your identification with the citizenship. ID needs to be government issued, has your photo, needs to be valid. Ideally, it would be a state driver's license or a state ID card. And lastly, the photograph, current photograph, color, taken within the last 6 months. Those are the basic requirements for every application. For gender and name changes, we require 2 different documents. As I think it was Gabriel who said previously, they can be done at the same time, or they could be done or just one at a time on an application. And on the application, we do ask for a gender. It's we don't offer a non-binary option. It's either male or female. So if one were to want to change a gender, we would need to see a letter from a licensed physician, an MD or a DO that attests to the gender transition, and it can either be in process or it can be a fully complete transition. And then for the name change, we want to see original documents of a court-ordered name change in order to complete the name change. So running down the checklist, first thing you need is the DS-11 application for a passport, the color photo, citizenship evidence, ID, payment, and then the letter from the physician and or the documents for the name change. On our website, we have I'll show the link to this information on our website. We do have a template for the medical letter. But to go over the specifics, it has to be an original signed letter from the doctor on their letterhead showing all the information, data about the doctor who's overseeing the transition. And then it has to have specific language that you see at the bottom, including that the doctor establishes the relationship with you, the passport applicant, that they're undergoing the appropriate clinical treatment, and then the declaration from the doctor that the letter is true. For name changes, we not only accept court orders, original court orders for name changes, but name changes can be done through marriage as well. In that case, we would want to see a marriage certificate. One thing to note is, I think it depends on the state, but generally, name changes through marriages are only for the last name. Sometimes, I believe states differ in the way they do full name change to the first name. And then if neither of those are available, we do accept documents showing customary usage, which just means that a person has used a particular name over a long extended period of time, in which case we would accept an array of documents showing that customary continued usage of the name. Now, as it relates to transitions, if a person were to apply for a passport and the transition is not complete, we are able to issue a temporary or limited passport that would be for 2 years. So typically for adults that are over 16 years old and older, passports are good for 10 years. But in the situation that a person would want to apply for a passport, an adult would want to apply for a passport while the transition process is not complete, then we would be able to issue a 2-year passport. The only difference is that the medical letter from the doctor is going to state in the process of having treatment for the transition instead of it's been completed. And the good thing about the limited passport is that it can be renewed, or it can be turned into us for a full 10-year passport at no cost if it's turned in within 2 years. And then to jump to the different products that we have and costs, passports can be either the passport book or the passport card. The difference is really in price and then usage. The book can be used for international trips by land, sea, water, around the world. The card, which I'm sure some people in the El Paso area use, can be used for land crossings to either Mexico, Canada, and then in some cases by sea travel to the Caribbean. But one is able to apply for either one or both. And the application for either is really the same. We will need to establish citizenship, US citizenship, identification for both of them. And then for more resources, the first link, travel.state.gov/gender, has all of the information that I just spoke to, in addition to the medical letter example or template. And then for information by phone, we have the call center. And then also another thing to point out, on our website, travel.state.gov, if you click on country-specific information, you'll be able to choose a country to which you plan to travel and find out very specific information, not only travel safety information, but local laws pertaining to LGBTQ topics. And then of course, our social media at the end. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Andres, for that presentation. You can, like Andres said, you can change your name and your gender marker on your passport. And if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in at the bottom of the chat in your Q&A box so that Andres can answer them once we move on to that section of the webinar. And again, if you're joining us and you would like to listen in on the Spanish translation, si gusta participar en español, oprima interpretación en la parte baja de su pantalla y seleccione Spanish. Next, we will hear from Ray Vigil, Public Affairs Specialist from the Social Security Administration, to talk about the process for updating your name on your Social Security card. Thanks for being with us, Ray.
Thank you for having me. First and foremost, of course, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. First and foremost, of course, want to let the public know that although the Social Security offices are closed because of COVID-19, we are still offering services through the telephone. We can provide you with any kind of information if you call the 800 number, 800-772-1213. Or if you will visit the Social Security website, which is socialsecurity.gov, you can actually find all the information that you would normally find at a Social Security office. Plus, you can also take care of a lot of transactions through the internet. If you want to file for Social Security retirement benefits, disability benefits, Medicare benefits, supplemental security income, you can actually do that online without having to set up an appointment or go to the Social Security office. And of course, you can do a lot of changes on your Social Security record once you're already receiving Social Security benefits. And for those of you that are not receiving Social Security benefits and are still working, you want to find out and you want to monitor your Social Security records. So you want to actually create your My Social Security account and monitor your Social Security record for accuracy, because accuracy is how we determine how much you're going to receive in form of Social Security benefits. So if you're missing a couple of years of wages, you're not going to get the right amount that you're supposed to get from Social Security. So I highly recommend, well, at least once a year, check your Social Security record. And of course, if you're getting closer to retirement, you want to know precisely how much you're going to receive in Social Security. So monitor the Social Security record, make sure it's accurate. If it's not accurate, report it to the Social Security office and we'll take care of the inconsistencies there. Also, identity theft. Identity theft is growing by numbers. You want to make sure that nobody misuses your Social Security number. So by creating your Social Security account, you can actually tell whether anybody has used your Social Security number for work purposes. So again, monitor your record at least once a year. And of course, reminding everybody about the telephone scams that we can't get rid of. People are receiving calls left and right from numbers that are mimicking the Social Security telephone number, and they're claiming to be Social Security representatives. So don't provide them with any personal information. Don't provide them with your bank information, your credit cards, or if they ask you for a gift card from a given store, do not hang up. Do not give them any personal information. Call the Social Security office and they'll give you the necessary information where you can actually go to socialsecurity.gov/OIG and you can actually file a report. So talking about the Social Security updating the record to show a change of name, change of gender, by all purposes, you always have to fill out the application form SS5, which is the application for Social Security number. If all you're going to do is replace your Social Security card, if you're over 18 years of age, a U.S. citizen with state ID, a driver's license, you can actually apply for a replacement Social Security card through the internet. You no longer have to visit the Social Security office. But if you're going to change your name or change your gender, of course, it does require a personal interview with one of the Social Security representatives. And changing your name or changing your gender, first and foremost, of course, we're going to have to establish your identity. So make sure that you have current documents that identify you as to your actual name. If you're changing your name, you're going to have a current document that shows your name as recorded on the Social Security records. And then you're going to have a document that's going to support the new name that you're going to use from that day forward. For instance, if you're submitting a change of name because of a divorce, you're going to have to submit your divorce decree where the judge actually authorized you to actually change your name. If it's a marriage, your marriage is the reason that you're going to change your name. You're going to submit a marriage certificate. So every instance, the reason that you're going to change your name, you're going to have a document that is going to support the reason that you're changing your name. If you're changing your gender, okay, if you're changing your gender, then it gets a little bit more complicated. We are requesting for a full validity 10-year U.S. passport with the new sex. And of course, we do not accept passports with less than 10 years, okay? A state issued amended birth certificate with a new sex, a court order directing a legal recognition of a change of sex, or a medical certification of the appropriate clinical treatment for gender transition in the form of an original signed statement from a licensed physician, whether it be a doctor or a doctor of osteopathy. The statement must include the following: the physician's full name, the medical license and the certificate number, the issuing state, county, and jurisdiction of the medical license or certificate of that medical practitioner, the address and telephone number of the medical practitioner, language, the language stating that the individual has either treated the individual in relation to the individual's changing gender or has reviewed and evaluated the medical history of the individual in relation to the individual's changing gender, that the physician has a doctor-patient relationship with the individual. And of course, language stating, I declare under penalty of perjury that under the law of the United States that the foregoing is truth and correct, okay? And of course, in several instances, we do have to have proof of citizenship. So if you were born outside the United States, we're going to have either a naturalization certificate or a passport that shows that you are U.S. citizen. If you're a legal resident, of course, your immigration document to support that you're a legal resident in the United States. And that's basically it. But the most important thing, of course, is that it will require a face-to-face interview. It does require that you have to fill out the application form SS5 and talk to one of the Social Security representatives. Now, if it's a situation that takes place during the pandemic, and because of the fact that we're close to the public, you can call the 800 number, and they will actually call the local Social Security offices to see if they can accommodate you with an appointment so that you can actually visit with one of the Social Security representatives during the COVID-19, during the pandemic. So of course, a lot of the information is already in existence at the Social Security website. All you have to do is go to www.socialsecurity.gov if you're looking for information in Spanish, www.segurosocial.gov, and we have over 500 questions and answers that have already been asked, where you can probably find all the information on our Social Security website. If you need to talk to me directly, of course, my name is Ray Vigil. I'm the Public Affairs Specialist for the Social Security Administration, and my telephone number where you can get a hold of me is 866-593-0939, and my extension is 27404. And of course, if you have any questions, those questions will actually follow the presentation at the end. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ray. I am typing your information in the chat for everybody to see. If you don't mind repeating that, I think the phone number I got for you is 866-593-0939, extension 27404, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share that with everybody in the chat so that you have it in writing in front of you. And I just want to say again, thank you so much to all our presenters for all the valuable information you've shared with us. I want to go over a couple of questions that we have been asked. And then I will actually ask Gabriel to come back on and reiterate the invitation to the clinic. And if you have that flyer handy, maybe you can share your screen and present that as well. But let me go over the questions. Somebody did ask if we will be sharing this recording. We will. This is being recorded and we will be uploading it to Congresswoman Escobar's YouTube page. And we have your emails from the registration of this event, so I'll be distributing that later so that you can share it widely, uplifted with your networks. Information and knowledge is power, so please distribute accordingly as you see fit. Another question came in asking, is medically transitioning required to change the gender marker in Texas? And does taking hormones qualify? I know that Gabriel went over this before, but maybe you can just quickly answer that live, please.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And, but I know it's a little confusing, so I'll go through it again. So medically transitioning is not required to change your gender marker in the state of Texas, but we do prefer that you have a letter from a doctor in order to change your name, to change your gender marker. It's preferable to have a letter from a doctor. If you don't have a letter from a doctor, you can get a letter from a mental health counselor, like a counselor or psychologist or a therapist who you're seeing. can provide the letter, but there's no guarantee that it'll be approved by the court. There's always a chance that they won't accept it. And so for that reason, it's also harder to change your passport without a doctor's letter, or you need a doctor's letter to be able to change your passport eventually. And so we always recommend that if you can, you get a doctor's letter. We do know that there are lots of trans folks who don't want to medically transition, don't see that as a part of their transition, or haven't made up their mind about whether or not they want to medically transition, but do know that they want to change their name and gender marker. There are also lots of trans folks who have medically transitioned by getting HRT, by crossing the border and getting HRT, or getting HRT through other means that are not through the prescription and supervision of a medical doctor. And so trans people can also get a letter from a physician who provides some kind of care. We prefer that if the person is medically transitioning in some way, that the letter come from that doctor providing that gender affirming care, but they can also get a letter from like a general practitioner or a family doctor in order to satisfy the doctor's letter requirements. HRT absolutely does count as medical transition, and that is the main the majority of the doctor's letters that we get are from endocrinologists or another doctor providing HRT. So yeah, HRT absolutely does qualify. And so the short answer is no, you don't really need to medically transition in order to change your gender marker in Texas. The longer answer is that it's a little complicated, but if for whatever reason you cannot get a doctor's letter, we will always try with the counselor's letter, and we have successfully done that a lot, or a letter from any other mental health professional.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. And I saw that Andres from the Passport Services said that medical transition such as surgery is not required to change your gender for your passport. And Adri also responded in the chat here saying that taking hormones is considered part of medically transitioning. A letter from a physician is required. One option was a doctor providing hormones. Another option was any physician. Another option is a mental health provider. All things that Gabriel just went over, a little complicated. So of course, please reach out to myself or presenters if you still have questions. Another person asked if, or mentioned that their social security number apparently had been compromised and that they found out by trying to apply for Medicare and how to fix this. Ray from the Social Security Administration responded by saying that you need to visit with one of the Social Security representatives to discuss and review your Social Security work history. And you have Ray's information in the chat, but of course, for you to reach out to me and I can connect you. So I think that concludes our questions. No, we have a couple more. We have reached the end of the hour though. So what I will do is I will gather these questions unless you all have just a couple more minutes to stick around. I don't want to keep people too long.
I'd be happy to stick around. If people have other questions, I'd be happy to stay for a little longer. If that's okay with you. This is the
okay.
Clinic. It's a little hard to see on this background, so I do apologize. The clinic itself is on the 22nd. We are asking people to register by January 15th, but the sooner the better, so that way we can exactly what it is that you need for that day. If you don't have all your documents ready by that day, that's totally okay. You can still participate. We can still help you file and complete the petition, and then we'll just figure out how to file it once you get all your documents. But if you have all your documents by that day, that's even better because you can walk out of there ready to file. And by walk I mean from your living room, because it'll be a Zoom.
A virtual walk.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So I'm going to get that flyer from you. We're going to get all the information, all the phone numbers and websites and all the info that was shared in the chat. We're going to put it all together and share it with the list of registrants for this event so that you have it. And if you, we are getting more questions as we speak. I'm so sorry that we didn't allow more time for that. I do want to be mindful of everybody's time. So what I will do is, since Gabriel offered to stick around, I am going to stay on for a few more minutes, but I will just like to take this opportunity before moving on to those questions. Thank everyone again for joining us, and thank our guests and our presenters for joining this virtual workshop and providing information about the process for updating name and gender marker and vital everyday government documents. I want to thank our sign language interpreters and our Spanish translator, Ana Nunez, for your services. And I want to remind our attendees that our office can connect you with any of the agencies and nonprofit organizations that presented today. Our caseworkers at Rep. Escobar's district office are also available to assist you if you have any problems with a federal agency, such as the Social Security Administration or the Department of State. And you can contact us at our office at 915-541-1400 or email at veronica.escobar@mail.house.gov. So if you are a panelist and you have to jump off, please do so. Gabriel's going to stick around and we're just going to answer these 3 questions that popped up in the chat. Claudia asked if I had my SRS on September 2020, will my past letters work for change of gender marker?
If you have your SRS in, so just to clarify, because I definitely don't want to create any confusion, you don't need any surgical transition of any kind to be able to do this. If you do have a letter from a top surgeon, from a surgeon who provided some kind of gender affirming surgical care, then yes, that as a medical letter, a letter from a doctor, if your doctor is willing to provide it. So if you did have a gender affirming surgical procedure, that doctor can write you a letter for this process, but it's by no means necessary to do surgery. You know, there's HRT or some of the other options I listed, like getting the letter from a general practitioner or a mental health counselor. But yes, short answer is yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Can I go ahead and add something real quick in reference to gender change?
Please do.
Also to mention, if they have an amended birth certificate that shows the new gender, that will be acceptable for Social Security purposes. Okay, or if they have if it is a court order allowing them to change their sex, they can actually submit a court order where it says that they're allowed to change their sex. Okay, I just wanted to include that as far as additional documentation that they can actually use for gender changes. Okay.
Thank you so much to both of you. So the next question is, I've never had a passport. Once I change my name and gender marker, do I still need to do what you lined up in your presentation? If Andres is still with us, would you mind answering that?
Sure. So if you've never had a passport, yes, you will need all the documents that I listed out in the presentation. The DS11 application for a first-time passport. You'll need a proof of citizenship, which could be a original birth certificate, ID, driver's license, or any type of photo ID. Then the original name change documents, however that was done, and then the letter showing that the transition was complete from the medical doctor. You'll need to submit all of those together in person at an acceptance facility, which could be public library, clerk of court, or US Post Office. I believe there's seven passport acceptance facilities in El Paso. You wanna call ahead, use our website to find where they are. Call ahead, see if they require an appointment now. Sometimes it's walk-in, sometimes they require appointments. You'll take all those documents with you and the application. You could fill out the application, but don't sign it until you're in front of one of the agents. When you're in front of the agent, that's when they'll review everything. If they have questions, then hopefully they're well trained on what's needed. But in some cases, they may have a question or two. Depending on the situation, if you feel confident that you're ready, that you have everything that's required, and you know you want to apply for the passport, then you can go ahead and proceed with the oath, and then you will sign the application in front of them. You'll pay them in the form of a check. So one check will go to them, maybe the post office, and then the other check will go to the US Department of State. And then that facility will send all of those documents and the application to us. And then we then adjudicate. And then we will send you back all of those original documents in the mail. And if we have any questions, you'll most likely receive a phone call or maybe a written letter to your mailing address for if there's any issues or if we need anything clarified.
Great, thank you so much. Another question that came in is how long does the name change process take after sending the required items?
I can answer that. It usually takes a few weeks to get the petition. I always tell people it can take a little less, it can take a little more. Sometimes we've gotten them really quickly and sometimes we've gotten them, it's taken a little longer. It generally doesn't take more than 6 weeks. And then after that, it's really up to you because you then have to update. So with the order, you have to go and update your driver's license, your passport, like Andres mentioned, your social security card, like Ray mentioned. Every document from then on is your responsibility to update. But the order itself takes usually no more than 6 weeks. Sometimes we have clients call us like the day after it's been a few weeks, like the day, like if I say it usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks, like the day after the 3 weeks are over, they'll call and be like, I still haven't gotten it. It really varies depending on how busy the court is, but it usually doesn't take too long.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So the last question we have is how soon after name and gender change will we need to change the social security number card or SSN card?
Ray might have more, Ray might have more specific information on that. But it really, you can go at your own pace. The sooner you do it, the better. What I always tell people is that the sooner you update your documents, the easier everything will be, because from the point that your petition is approved, your name is legally now your chosen name. Right? So now you're carrying documents that don't match your actual legal identity. And that can create all sorts of problems. So the sooner you can get your driver's license and social security done, the better. As far as I know, there's no real limit. I know sometimes people that take like 3 years to do their birth certificate after we've changed it. And I'm always like, but that's, you know, what they've decided to do, and they're still able to do it.
So it is kind of up to each individual. Ray, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, and I agree. The sooner you do it, the better. For most part, of course, you're going to have to change all your documents, okay? All your legal records. And of course, a lot of times we happen to misplace the documents that gave us the authority to actually change the name. So as soon as you have the documents at hand, go ahead and contact the Social Security office and we'll take care of changing your name or changing your gender. And then you can go ahead and proceed with changing all the other records that are necessary to change.
Okay, well, that concludes our questions. Again, thank you all so much. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you for the attendees who joined us. This is being recorded, as I mentioned before. We're going to upload it and then we will distribute it so that you can share it, amplify it, uplift it. And we will share all the information that was dropped in the chat, as well as the flyer for the clinic on January 22nd. So that we can get as many El Pasoans as possible registered for that and help them get their name and gender marker corrected if they wish to do so. So thank you again, everybody, so much. Thanks for bearing with us as we went over a little bit after the hour, but I wish everybody a safe and healthy rest of your week and happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm looking forward to having folks reach out to sign up for the clinic. Thank you again so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.